Hi, this is Janine, your keynote speaker for intercultural creativity, neurosomatic creativity, and prismatic leadership. I am so excited to be with you today. I haven't been here in a while, just traveling a lot and really getting the word of all of these types of creativities out around America, and also with talking about brain capital, brain health, and just supporting the work that is being done in other areas and sharing all of that. And today I wanted to almost kind of do a mini keynote, just giving you a little bit of a taste of what I've been sharing and some of the research that it's coming out. I don't call myself like a researcher, like I'm not going out and doing labs and experiments, but I'm a meta researcher, meaning I am at the labs of all of these great neuroscientists, creative psychologists, and just everyone really putting out some great work and combining the work and seeing where there's themes and seeing where there's overlap and really seeing where we can do a better job of breaking down the walls of the silos. The neurosciences are over there, K-12 or K-5 is over here, high school's back there, the psychologists are over there, the business people and the economists are way down the street. And so we're all doing this work in our own silos. And I'm like, we need to be talking to one another. The neuroscientists need to be talking to K-12, and K-12 needs to be connecting with the university people. And you have people doing music and medicine and doing really great work. And the neuroscientists are over here talking about other aspects. We're just not communicating well. So I see myself being the bridge because I'm just in everywhere. And for those of you who know me, my background is in education. And I taught K-5. I run a nonprofit for 6 through 12. I taught at the university level at California State University. And now I'm doing a lot of corporate work. And even within corporate, I'm in different disciplines as well. I've spoken to healthcare, spoken to business, finance, tech. I'm doing a keynote for IBM in May, and doing a keynote for IBM and then LUSD principles in the same day. So when I say I'm in almost every field and in every level, and I see a lot of themes. And so today I will be doing a little bit longer of a Diamond Mentor moment. This is our logo. We are the Diamonds. And we are going to be looking at the concept of brain capital. If you have not heard it, please write it down. It is the next big thing, and hopefully a stabilized thing, not just a fad, but it's the next big thing really about how do we get our citizens of our nation and the world to be brain healthy. This is coming from the work of Dr. Harris I and some other people from the Brain Capital Alliance and some other neuroscience scientists really saying that we need to get the brain capital, and I'm going to explain that in a slide, to be revitalized. And what does that look like? What's really draining that? And I want to offer a interesting perspective of one of the ways to get our brain capital levels back into the positive. And so let's jump in. This is really just some things that I'm sharing either within workshops or even keynotes. And I wanted to share it with you today because I love to teach, and here I am. All right, so we are looking at brain capital and brain health. What does it look like to build the 21st century skills with an interesting aspect, using the arts? What does that look like? First of all, what is brain capital? That's a new word for some of you. Hopefully you know what the brain is, right? It's this organ, this organ right here that is in charge of so much, in charge of connected to our mind. It is not our mind by itself, but it's a part of the mind and heavily influenced by and influences the mind, right? But the mind's more complex than just the brain itself. But how do we get this to be as healthy as possible so we can not just survive, but thrive in this future of work? Brain capital sits on 3 pillars, right? You have your brain capital drivers, you have your brain health, and then you have your brain skills. I'm focused on the brain skills and brain health, these main 2 pillars. And really with brain skills, you're looking at cognitive skills, creative skills, your ability to have attention. Attention is huge in the brain. What the brain pays attention to shapes the brain. What the brain pays attention to with emotion shapes the brain. And emotional behavior control in all your areas. If those of you who got the book, My Brain, My Brain, My Beautiful Brain, that my son and my husband and I wrote together. You'll go over the different parts of the brain and what they do, your frontal cortex, your cerebellum and your corpus callosum, all of those fun parts and how they work together in a symphony to help you be you. And so we also look at self-awareness, empathy, and of course, my work, creativity. What does it look like to have a brain that's highly creative? Going to the other pillar, you have brain health, right? And there's some people doing some great work. My son and I actually have a Zoom meeting with some people from the Center of Brain Health over at Dallas, Texas on Monday. I said, Sean, this is your meeting. They want to meet you. So he's excited about that. And they are really celebrating their 25th anniversary, doing wonderful work on what does it mean to have a healthy brain? Meaning, I'm not just looking at the brain when something goes wrong, when something is not functioning to the best of its capability, but I'm being proactive of making sure I have a healthy brain. I want to go to the next slide. This is really astonishing statistics. I was watching the UN Brain Summit, and Dr. Gregory Ruth was talking, and he showed this slide. And I don't know if you can read some of the tiny text, but what it says is, he said the top 2 disorders or issues that are contributing to brain decline are anxiety and depressive disorders. And if you look at this graph at the bottom, it's starting from 5 to 9 years old. Even under 5, there's a little bit, but the second you hit 5 to 9, it jumps up. And these are in millions, and this population was taken over in Europe, but USA and Europe tend to have similar data. Sometimes the USA is a little bit worse. And look at the level of orange. And I'm glad they use orange, because orange is alarming, right? Look at the level of anxiety disorders, especially within our youth. Even from 15 or from 5 to 19 years old, you're looking at 2 million, right? And American numbers are pretty similar. These numbers are huge. And so I'm really wanting to push out the work of how do we be proactive earlier in the lifespan to give students coping mechanisms and tools to deal with anxiety, to deal with depressive or depressive disorders, and to deal with life's ups and downs. So what does that look like? And so we are moving on into brain capital, and brain capital really supporting the 21st century leader. Here are some skills: creativity, curiosity, communication, resilience, and regeneration. Regeneration, I mean, not just bouncing back, but bouncing back higher than you were, something also known as post-traumatic growth, right? What does it mean to be even better? Adaptation and connection. These are the skills of the 21st century leader. So how did these skills connect to brain health? Frederick Douglass, one of my mentors, of course, he died way before I was born, but you can still learn from people who are not here. And he said it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken adults, right? And of course, we know the brain is plastic throughout the lifespan. We can rewire our neural networks, and we can just make our brain stronger, even if you're starting in adulthood. But it's easier to wire children the correct way. I believe Dr. Laura Jana used the example of a house, right? And I'm going to use that example of a house here. We are actually building a house right now. And it's better to get the wiring in when the walls are not up yet, as opposed to doing the whole house and then putting the wiring in. And so building strong brains, I believe, is the same concept, right? Metaphorical concept. If we can build strong children and infants with these tools and with some other things I'm going to talk about, then that will help them be better able to flourish in an adaptable and an ambiguous workforce. So here it is. Hopefully you recognize what this is. If you had a 10th grade chemistry class, you should know what this is. This is the periodic table of elements. Everything around you is made up of some of these elements on this screen, right? You have hydrogen, you have gases, you have solids, you have some that are in liquid form. it's the combination of these elements that make different states of matters, different items, right? It's how you combine the elements. You take away one element, you added two more, it's a completely different object, right? This is amazing. And so I'm really looking at how do we take this concept and say, what are the elements that really builds a strong brain, a healthy brain, and a human being earlier on that can flourish throughout the vicissitudes of life, right? What are those elements? And I honestly believe, in addition to strong social connections and of course strong diet health, and of course the safety elements, right? They have a roof over the head, they have food, they have the basic things needed to survive. What are those elements that are needed to thrive? And we have their ability to be in their default mode network. So what this pertains to is creativity. Some of you know the default mode network. It's when you're daydreaming and you're kind of going inside yourself. How do we allow our children and our adults to activate their default mode network for good? Now, you can activate it for bad, meaning you're worrying and you're ruminating over the worst case scenarios, but how do we use it for good? You're thinking about creative ideas, your unconscious is combining and recombining information. And that question at the top of the screen, where do you get your best ideas? Where do you get your best ideas? You normally get them, anyone, and feel free to comment and share in the comments if you're looking on LinkedIn or Facebook. A lot of people yell out when I do this in my keynotes. They yell out the shower, they yell out taking a walk, they yell out sometimes driving on a routine they know automatically. You get your best ideas when you're in your default mode network for the most part, which means your brain is basically, playing ping pong with ideas and your lived experiences and your social connections and things you never thought about for a long time are coming back up to the surface, right? And so Dr. Martin Seligman said your default mode network is the best finding in the 21st century because we get to see what the brain is doing when you're not externally doing something. And so how do we turn on our default mode network for good? I believe it's the arts. It's the arts. Those of you who have seen my work, I'm not quiet about this. If you've seen my posts, April was National Poetry Month, so you even may have seen some of my poems, right? And some poems that I posted from other people as well. I believe this is the era, right? Especially the decade, but the era, not just the decade of the brain, but the decade of understanding what elements are really going to help the brain flourish and really give people coping skills to deal with anxiety and other brain health disorders. And I personally believe that the arts should definitely be a part of that equation for many reasons, and you're going to hear why. But the arts open the door to our default mode network, right? The arts allows us to get into this way of thinking and just this way of internally communicating with ourselves and then externally looking at the art and then going inside and going outside. If you really go to like a museum or something like that, you're having this movement, right? This oscillation back and forth of internally thinking what it means to you and then looking at it externally. From the work of Dr. Gabrielle out of Pomona College, she talks about that, about neural aesthetics and what it does with the default mode network. And so I'm advocating that arts stay in school and has an integrative component in the curriculum in school, but arts also has an integrative component in corporate training and corporate wellness programs and just corporate areas, healthcare, finance, all the areas where people are looking to think well and to be well and to have ways to express their lived experience. The arts are going to be a big part of that. And so just like the periodic table of elements, we have the art elements in a periodic form. So we just created this, it's copywritten, and we're excited to present this to the world. Just like the periodic table of elements are just single elements that when you combine them in different ways, they produce different things, they have a different effect. I believe the art elements are the same way. So we're going to spend some time together. This is, like I said, a little bit longer than my normal Diamond Mentor moments, but I really want to get this out there and also be able to share this video in the future if people really want to see where this research is coming from. These are your synapses. And when you're in the womb and you're born, your synapses are you have billions of neurons, and your synapses are working on just connections, right? That's why you see infants doing this, because their synapses aren't well connected, but they're there. Look at this graph. By 2 years old, they are just, making connections, making pathways, and the 2-year-old is really figuring out how their world works. By the time a child gets from 4 to 6-year-olds, you have synaptic pruning, where the synapses are like, okay, well, do I speak Japanese? I don't, so I don't need that over there. And do I do this? Not really, so I don't need that over there. And they're pruning. And that's why doing this work as early as possible, right? Giving human beings different strategies and different experiences and different artistic experiences to help them express themselves and figure out what's going on in the world as early as possible is key, because look at the synapses, right? They start pruning by 6 years old. I have a 6-year-old now, and I saw this research years ago. So I got on it quick of how can he have varied experiences and musical experiences, because his synapses were very active at that time. And so once again, we know that the brain can continue to change, even though it's a lot harder in adulthood. Keep this in mind. If you have children or young people in your care, keep this in mind. And you'll see. And so, these are PDFs. So this isn't moving the way it would move on my normal PowerPoint. And so the ones at top, if you can see it, these are the music elements. You have pitch, tempo, dynamic, rhythm, harmony, melody, timbre. Looks like timbre, but it's pronounced timbre, and form. Music is key. Okay. And music is key for the human being at the early part of life, but it is key for the human being throughout the lifespan. Beat is important. A child that has a difficulty keeping the beat, we have connected it now to reading, right? The rhythmic part of reading, the rhythmic part of language, they're connected. Rhythm with music and rhythm with language and speech and other elements are connected. And so we really want to make sure people can keep the beat. I was really big on this when my son was young, and more or less for personal reasons. Like, I cannot have a human being hopping off the beat next to me. So you got to get the beat. But little did I know at that time, I kind of knew intuitively that him keeping the beat would bridge over into other areas of interaction with his reading, with his ability to collaborate with other people, to sense out the rhythmical elements of life, right? Life is rhythm. You have the elements of the waves, the ebb and flow of the waves. You have your heartbeat. You start your life with the rhythm and the beat of your heart. Everything is rhythmic. And so not to give a human being training in rhythm at the beginning of part of their life and continuing on is an issue. And we also know people who are dealing with degenerative diseases, such as Parkinson's disease. They introduce rhythm to help them move and to help them do better in their area. This is Dr. Nina Kraus, and someone I study under. She's brilliant. And of course, I bring in a lot of her work from her lab. And she says music is the jackpot. Music and language, right? Children and adults, they should learn music and they should learn language. And not just music like you're just listening, even though that's good as well, but producing music. This is really important. And so learning this and seeing the astronomical numbers of people getting Alzheimer's disease and people getting other neurodegenerative diseases, and really listening to the research on that. Music is important. So even in our home, after dinner, I say, "Oh, I have to do my brain homework," and I get out my guitar, right? And I play my guitar, and my son's watching me, right? This is a part of our culture, our home culture. Music is a part of our life, not just because it's fun and we're musical, but because we want to stay healthy emotionally and physically and neurologically. And so instead of waiting for the brain to break down on its own, we are doing proactive things. And we're going to come out with another book, hope probably next year, called The Brain Symphony, where it shows you the 7 movements, like a symphony, of keeping your brain healthy, because the brain operates like a symphony. Different parts that look different, but they interact in a beautiful, beautiful melodic way. And so, what does it look like to bring in music and language? If you speak multiple languages, kudos to you. Great job. If you don't, start now, right? Tú puedes hablas español or un diferente lengua que quieres. If you want to speak whatever language you want, if you're going somewhere, practice the language, because it just helps you listen to nuances in a different way. This is Dr. Annie Patel. He's over at Tufts University, and he has wonderful videos online, which all I do on Friday night is just listen to lectures, which is great. And he is talking about the beat. He has a wonderful book called Music, Language, and the Brain. And what he says music is predictive. And that is key, because they did a lot of studies with monkeys, and he said monkeys had a hard time clapping on the beat, because in order to clap on the beat and stay on the beat, you have to predict when the beat is coming. And so what does this mean for leaders in corporate? And what does this mean for students, in math and in science? Prediction is huge. Your brain is a predicting machine, right? It wants to predict the outcome. And so if you're training it in music and in other arts that fine tunes its ability to predict, you're just giving it more muscle and more strength to do that well. And so he also talks about transference variation, in that your ability to stay on the beat, to predict the beat, to change when the beat changes, right? Are you 3/4 time, or are you 4/4 time? And then the complex meters, like 5/8 time, and meters that we don't even have in our Western types of music, right? If you're able to really hear that and predict your movements to the beat, that really helps you in other areas. Here's why I say the leaders of tomorrow will have an arts background that will separate them from the rest. Great leaders are sensitive. We call it situational awareness. They're sensitive to rhythms. They're sensitive to emotional climates. They're sensitive to patterns. And great leaders, if they have that ability honed in, right, then they can detect it in different areas of life, whether it's in business, it's in personal life, it's in their own exploration. And so music does that. Music does that automatically. And if you can see this graph shown by Dr. Daniel Levitin in his lecture for Music as Medicine, and that's a 2-day summit. And that link, if you want it, please send me a note, and I can send it, or you can just look for it online. Music, la música, activates multiple areas of the brain at the same time, and that is huge. First of all, a reminder, there's no left brain, right brain theory that's been debunked, right? If you're creative, you're not just right brain, and logical, you're not just left brain. If you're creative, you're all brain. If you're logical, you're probably all brain too. So different parts of the brain interact and activate when you are engaged in music. This part, which is your corpus callosum, this is the part that connects both of the hemispheres together. It gets stronger, right? Because messages are going back between hemispheres. So one of the best things you can do for your brain is to get it active, get it dancing around, metaphorically speaking. And music does that. And so those are the music elements. Sorry, this is not coming up correctly, but those are the music elements. So let's move on to visual art. In visual art, you have the elements of color, of value, of space, of contrast, of unity and pattern, texture, form, and line, right? These are the elements that we utilize. Plus, there's a lot more, but these are just the ones that I'm bringing up. When I bring this to teachers and to leaders, it's normally like an introductory level. So, those of you who are advanced in the arts, please know that this is not for advanced, but this is just to introduce the basic first elements. And so, what do you see here, right? What do you see here? I'll give you a moment to look at it. Looks like a bowl of vegetables, right? But what if I do this? Or what if I flip it? And I actually don't have that image because I have the PDF this one. So when you flip it, and maybe you might want to flip your computer upside down, it looks like someone's face, right? And so what does that say? If you look at things from multiple perspectives, you see different things. Leaders who know how to look at things from multiple perspectives, they can see one thing and their brain can be agile and flexible and see another thing. So these are some things that I do with my clients and even my students, turning leaves, right, into insects and seeing the aspects of nature and creating a picture from it. What does it look like to engage in art in a different way? This is another thing that I do with my son, right? I travel a lot. I'm in airports a lot. We're in hotels. Sometimes my son gets to travel with me. And we went to Portland, Oregon when we were on the news about this book. We were launching this book. And even in the airport to the right, you'll see my son looking at this mirror with this wooden man on it. And we just stopped. A lot of times when we're in airports, we walk past the art displays. A lot of airports have art displays. And I challenge myself, do I ever stop and engage? Your top leaders will know how to stop and engage and go inward to their default mode network and say, okay, well, what is this? What does it mean to me? What is it trying to communicate? And how would I create in this same fashion? And so the picture in the middle is John Lennon, but it's made out of, let me see, beans. It's made out of beans. And if you look at that, and there's two coffee cups being his sunglasses, but I love that. And my students did something similar when they had to make characters out of whatever material they chose, but they had to communicate the reason why they chose it and metaphorically what did that communicate as well. So beans. And then the left one, my son and I, when he was about 2 or 3, we were just walking along and we saw this mural, and we don't walk along and ignore these are messages, these are communication points, and I want him to be aware of his surroundings. And great leaders are always aware of their surroundings. And so that is just a touch of visual art. Visual art helps you think deeply, and visual art helps you communicate metaphorically well. And for those of you who have seen my keynotes, we look at the cognitive elements of creative thinking, such as divergent thinking, metaphorical thinking, combinatory thinking, right? Your ability to combine different ideas, especially different ideas from different disciplines. We look at imagination, of course, that's a part of creative thinking, and fictive learning, your ability to create alternative endings to things, right? All of those are cognitive skills that you can get better at. Just like shooting a basketball, you can get better at. And so I choose to challenge people to get better at doing this with art. You do it with art when it's just for fun, it'll happen automatically when you're in that board meeting and you have to produce that creative idea that no one saw, no one imagined. You did because you were practicing in the airport at their artist display, right? It's always around you. And so that is some quick tips with the visual arts. All right. This one, if you can see the top boxes, so sorry again, we're looking at dance. Movement. What does movement have to do with being a great leader in this future of work with AI and automation and machine learning coming in and really challenging us humans to get back to what it means to be human and what are the traits, what are the abilities we have that hopefully AI won't make obsolete. and movement is one of them. Why? Because your body is an instrument of thought. Your brain, your beautiful, beautiful brain, the title of our book, is not it, is not the totality of everything, right? Your mind is a interaction and a dance with your brain, your body, your spirit, your soul, your environment, right? How you push into the environment and how it pushes back. It's all an interplay. And so being able to move and being able to express yourself in movement is huge. That's visual arts. And so what I want to make sure we communicate well is that the neuroscience has found, this is why I sit in on these meetings virtually. When you're listening to music, your auditory system, of course, is being activated. They see action there. But what they found out is your motor system is also being activated, even if you're not really moving. And what that speaks to me is that when you hear music, your brain is telling you, I want to move. I want to move. I want to move to the beat. I want to express my interaction with this music, with this beat through movement. Right. And it always tickles me, because if I'm in the mall or a place of worship and I hear music, I automatically feel like I have to move. Like my body's like pushing me to move. And sometimes I'm in places where people hear music and they're just very stoic and they don't move. I'm like, maybe I think they're using energy to stay still when their brain is saying, hey, I want to move with the beat. And so we see that in children, right? I even have a video that I showed during my workshops of a daddy just starts playing the piano and his two infant kids are just moving automatically. It's just built in us. It is built in us. And so leaders and future leaders who tap into the power of movement will be able to access just different ways of thinking and interacting with data and with ideas that people who don't move and people who don't explore different ways of ideation won't have access to. So keep that in mind. How do you move? This slide shows you your brain, your beautiful brain. And if you look at your cerebellum, which is right here at the bottom, they call it your mini brain because there's so many neurons packed in there, more neurons packed in this part than the rest of your brain. So be aware of that. But your cerebellum is responsible for movement, right? And you staying stable and you staying balanced and everything. And it's activated when you are moving throughout space. But what they recently found out, it also monitors your prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for your imagination and your thinking and your decision making, and your ability to have fictive learning, right? Imagine what the ending would be or have alternative endings, and to explore. They just really just tap into that higher level order thinking. Those of you who sometimes you're sitting down, you're like, oh, I just stuck on this problem, and your brain's kind of telling you to get up and walk around or pace or move or go for a walk. That's why your cerebellum is saying you need to move, because I need to move to think. I need to move to think, right? Those of you who saw Sir Ken Robinson's TED Talk when he was talking about the choreographer Gillian Lynn, right? She doesn't necessarily have ADHD, or there's nothing, and there's not an issue. She just has to move to think. So she signed up for a dance class, and she went to school at a dancing school, and she thrived because she had to move to think. But I'm not saying it's just for choreographers. That's for all of us. We have to move to think. And those of you who, this morning I got up and I walked outside. I got my sunlight, because the Center of Brain Health sends me these texts like to remind me, did you get your sunlight today, in the morning? And did I get my brisk walk? One thing that you might want to understand, and my son says, hey, did you get your BDNF time? BDNF. BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's like Miracle Grow for your brain, right? And it happens when you move, right? You move at a brisk pace. And there's really a lot of research coming out about the importance of movement, of getting your brain to have that BDNF time. Of course, your heart. We normally think about movement of keeping our heart strong, but really start thinking about movement about keeping your brain strong as well, because it's all connected. And there's vascular systems in your brain, right? There's blood moving throughout your brain. So when you move, especially early in the morning, I think better for the rest of the day when I move at the beginning of my day. So keep that in mind of why the arts are important. So movement takeaways, and please come see me in an actual live keynote, because these slides are actually doing stuff and really interactive. But move in different ways. Use movement to communicate ideas and sense patterns, right? And like I said, it produces BDNF for brain health. So movement is important. And so you can also integrate time, energy, action, where your body is in space, and that's when we bring in these dance elements. So you are combining and then theater, right? This says theatrical takeaways. Theater is really important. I believe theater is important for a numerous of reasons. There's a lot of corporate training in self-awareness, emotional intelligence, right? Emotional regulation. And I believe theater is an easy way to teach that. It is. It is. Poetry, spoken word, theater, monologues, dialogues. My brother works for JPL NASA in California, and there's a wonderful podcast that he's on, my Create and Grow podcast, so you can hear him speak directly. Joseph Jefferson for NASA, but they have programs now where the Caltech Theater Department partners with JPL NASA, and they put on musicals. I was just watching the first act of a musical they're putting together. It's still in beta. And these scientists and these engineers and these mathematicians are taking time out their day to create a musical about an idea that's important to them, which this particular play, it's called Earth Day Data, and it's about findings about with climate issues, and there's oil spills. But the oil spills are by a company that funds their research, so they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, and they're using the theater, the stage, to work out the issues with that development. And you see the emotion. You hear the songs. My brother actually had to compose one of the songs for the play, and it was beautiful. One woman behind me spoke, and she was like, "Your song made me cry." And he's a mathematician, and he's making people cry with his music. Now, he has a piano background, and he plays clarinet. My mother made sure to put us in music earlier on in life. But my advocacy and my research and my keynotes and my books, right, are all about people who use music and the arts in order to have better lives and have better skills in order to lead. So there's some takeaways for bringing in theatrical aspects. All right, so we are wrapping up, but before I leave, I cannot leave without talking about creative abuse. This is a term that I am coining, meaning when I say creativity, I don't just mean artistry. Creativity can be found in all fields in many different ways. You can be a creative mechanic. The mechanic who took care of my car for 20 years, he's very creative, but he doesn't do artistry that often, but he's highly creative, because the definition we're using for creativity is your ability to find and problem solve with relevance, value, and novelty, right? Something that's new and something that can produce value for you or the population at hand. And so I'm meeting a lot of people who have creative abuse, meaning they're in their adulthood and they don't do something either artistically or creatively because of something that happened in like the 10th grade. I don't sing because someone made fun of me in elementary school, and I just don't do it. Or I don't present new ideas because I have this fear of being ridiculed. And this is more common than you would think. And so this is really harming our ability to innovate, because innovation sits on your ability to be creative, and being creative sits on your ability to be curious and to speak out your curiosities and to ask questions, and to speak out new ideas that other people may not have thought of. And so we need to watch that we don't destroy the creativity of our children, and we need to restore it in our adults that have been abused or had some trauma with their creative journeys in their past. I use this picture here because this was drawn by a 5-year-old who was in kindergarten for 10 days, 10 days. And the teacher on his paper wrote, use appropriate colors, like check minus, right? And 10 days in school and his creativity is already being shot down, right? And his mother said, ever since that, he has a difference. Like he just embarks in his creativity differently. Like he's afraid of messing up. And he was in school for 10 days and it started, and his creativity was already being chipped away. And I have numerous stories of that. And so I just want to inform teachers and leaders and parents and caretakers, be very mindful of how we address the creative pursuits of people under our charge, right? Whether they're adults or adolescents or children, because we can harm their creative identity without even knowing it. And I meet several people in their adulthoods who had their creative identity harmed in the past, in their adolescence or childhood, and it changed the way that they saw themselves and the way that they saw their contributions. So Dr. Brene Brown has statistical data on that. And it's huge. And if we need our people to be creative in this new future of work, we have to make sure we protect their creative identity. And so she says, don't cause creativity scars and don't cause artistry scars in our students. And so this is just a quick overlay, about 40 minutes or so, just a quick introduction of what it means to build brain capital. So the arts builds brain capital because the arts increases creativity by having you exercise your skills in artistry, right? So creativity isn't only artistry, but artistry can enhance your creative thinking skills in non-arts areas, right? So if you are a musician, you have pitch discrimination, you can hear the emotion behind the words, and that's needed for empathy, right? And for just listening skills. If you're a musician, you have to listen well. Music also increases your working memory, right? For you to remember what was just said. In music, you have to remember the phrase that was just played to keep going. And so to be a great listener, you have to be able to tap into the underlying elements of language. Music strengthens that automatically, right? Visual arts, it gives you visual discrimination. I can read a person very well. I can be very sensitive to changes, right? And my son is great with this. He can see like someone's wearing purple socks and she has a purple purse over there and they match, and I celebrate that. Hey, you made a connection. Awesome. People who know how to make connections in areas that are not normally connected, that is a creative skill. And if you support it in your young people, it'll just get stronger when they get older. So the theater, visual arts, music, dance, we talked about the importance of moving, communication with your movement. It's huge. If those of you who are leaders and you're looking to be great speakers and to influence people, great speakers know how to use their body to speak as well, and they are metaphorically sound. So if you think of Martin Luther King and Maya Angelou and JFK, and just people who know how to speak well and move people well, they're great storytellers and they use metaphor and analogies very well. You train that in theater, right? You train that in creative writing. And so all of these areas, I believe, need to be present in not just K through 12, but in pre-K and in early childhood education, because as you saw the synapse, they start to prune by 6 years old. So before they even get to us in kindergarten, their brains are already pruning away things that it doesn't need. So if it doesn't have music at all, and by 6, you're like halfway done. So especially by 10, they say 10 is that age where it's passive. You don't just learn quickly through passive learning. So your infants can learn a lot through passive learning. That's how they get language. So we want to get this stuff to our kids before they leave elementary school. But if we don't, we need to get it to them. And adults need to have it in order just to get stronger, but also those numbers are astronomical. Alzheimer's, dementia, and other neurodegenerative diseases, it's coming on strong, and our population is aging. We need to be mindful of that, and we need to be doing things now, right? I was born in '79. I'm in my 40s, even though I may not look it. So I'm in my 40s, and they said brains in their 30s, brains in their 30s have sites or have just dementia or Alzheimer's or just degenerative diseases can start showing up in your 30s or 40s, even though you may not have symptoms till your 60s or 70s, but the brain's starting to. So if you keep your brain active throughout the lifespan, you're moving, you're playing, you're having social connections, you're eating well, right? You're eating a lot of vegetables and fruits and salmon. And I'm going to do a whole lesson on just diet for the brain, right? Because our food is harming us like no other. And you're just doing these things to have a strong brain. All right. So I can talk for like 5 more hours, but I'm not. So just so you know, we have training programs, we have keynotes, we have a group of amazing speakers who train on this, on intercultural creativity, neurosomatic creativity, and prismatic leadership that supports brain capital. Please look up Brain Capital, look up the work of Dr. Harris, Eyre, because that's going to be huge in this next decade of people building the brains and building the brain capital and brain health of their employees and their communities. So thank you so much. Reach out if we can ever be of service, and have a good, brain healthy and creative week. We'll see you next time. Bye.